Well, I'm standing outside the Launceston Town Hall actually to remember Dr. Charles Causley and Dr. Charles Causley Festival. And I've got a lady beside me now, and she knows all about Charles Causley Trust. What's her name, by the way?
It's Nicola Nuttall, and I'm the director of the Charles Causley Trust at the moment.
Charles Causley is actually a trust, and also Charles Causley Festival. Is it separate, isn't it?
No, they're the same now, the same organisation. So after Charles's death, there were a number of interested parties who came together and decided to commemorate Charles and find different ways of collecting memorabilia about him. Also did things like bought the house that he used to live in at Cypress Well. Different sort of groups came together. In the last few years, those groups have amalgamated and they've all become the Charles Causley Trust.
It's all joined together now, so we all just one party, like Charles Causley would have liked in the first place, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is about working together and working for the benefit of Launceston at the same time. And I think that's very much what we're interested in at the Trust. It's about supporting artists and writers, both from locally but also further afield. But also what we want to do is really engage the local community with the opportunities that Charles can bring them. So we're looking at projects around literacy. We're looking about connecting with some of the artists and writers that come to Charles's house and looking at workshops and all sorts of things really. And the festival is a really good opportunity to bring together people who are interested in Charles or get the local community more engaged with it. So we're talking at the moment with English Heritage and a number of local heritage and literary organisations in and around Cornwall to look how we can do things even better.
Charles Causley was born in 1917 actually, and he lived in Cypress Well in 1952, didn't he?
That's right. So he was born
Died.
Yeah, that's right. So he was always in Launceston, apart from when he was away in the war in the Navy, and then
6 years.
Yes, 6 years, and then he went over to Peterborough to train as a teacher. And then he came back here to teach at the National School. So there were many people who remember Charles. He was part of the kind of fixture and fittings of Launceston. Very kind of unassuming man, I think. Carried on teaching throughout his life and used to write in the evenings. And so he used to say that he came home, had his tea or had a snack, had a bit of a snooze, because as we know, teaching is quite a full-on thing, especially with young children. And then he'd start his writing, and he used to say that without writing, writing his poetry, he thought he'd explode, which I think is a lovely thing, you know, that he did his day job, and then this was his release. And it's just fabulous. With Launceston, there are very few places you can find anywhere in the world where a poet focused a lot of their writing on the geography or the people, the place. And to have that in Launceston, in such a beautiful town, provides a real opportunity for all of us at the Trust, but also for the local community, for children to engage with and local communities to engage with.
He did say, actually, if you only had one book published, that would have been good enough, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I'm always amazed at how many books have been uncovered, you know, that he's written or edited or compiled. And there's such a variety of texts there as well. Everyone knows him for his children's poetry, which is just exquisite. I mean, Timothy Winters is just fabulous. The imagery in there, and he used a lot of wartime imagery, you know, which shows the impact that the war had on him. But I think it was the war, his teaching, his landscape, the place around where he'd grown up and he lived.
At the school actually, when he went to taught at National School, and then it closed in 1969, and then he went on to St Catherine's. That's when he started retiring after that. But when he left the college to go teaching, he was introduced by Mr Keith.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I mean, I'm sure because you knew Charles. I wasn't fortunate enough to have met him.
That's what his son told me.
Oh, okay.
His son told me.
Oh, okay, that is interesting. And I also work at the University of Exeter, and we have the archive, Charles's archive, that he donated to the university. And before he died, in sort of that time between full-time teaching and retirement and beyond, he did teaching and lectureships at the university. So there's a really nice connection there. And for those of you that don't know, Exeter has just been awarded the UNESCO City of Literature status, which is a huge thing, a huge achievement. And because we've actually got the Charles Causley archive in Exeter, we can connect in with that festival and the whole programme that's going on. And that connects us to, it's about 200 and odd different cities of literature and culture around the whole world. So there's lots of
Charles did travel,
opportunity.
he just travelled to Plymouth, he just travelled to Australia as well,
He
didn't he?
did. I mean, he was
a Cornish bard as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's wrong to think of him just as living here and not going anywhere else and not being influential. Now, I lived in St Stephen's here in Launceston for quite some time, and we used to joke that when our friends were coming from all over the UK, they'd often stop in for a cup of tea or stop overnight before they were going further on into Cornwall. And I think that's probably what happened to Charles as well, that he was just a welcoming guy who encouraged people to stop in, and he became a real hub for poets. So if you speak to even current poets, they've been heavily influenced by his poetry, by his writing, but also the ones that were around when he was alive and still practicing as a poet. They spent a lot of time with him. So he went to Australia with Roger McGough, for example, a very famous Liverpudlian writer. He was good friends with Ted Hughes, Andrew Motion, who was a poet laureate more recently. He's used Charles as one of his main inspirations. Simon Armitage, who's the current poet laureate, frequently quotes Charles's work and the influence and inspiration that Charles gave. So I see him as this kind of very understated poet that was based in Launceston, drew upon his experiences in Launceston, his time in the war, his travels that he did afterwards, his experiences of teaching and local people as well as people he met on his travels.
The house actually down at Sligo as well, I mean, you're in the trust. It must keep the house up actually, and also have people go in there as well, don't you?
Absolutely.
To teach.
I mean, obviously at the moment, and at the moment it's been really hard with COVID. All those things that we normally try and do have been curtailed. So we try and do as much community engagement work as we can. We try and do as much when we have artists in residence or writers who are staying at Cypress Well. We try and engage them as much with the community as we can. It's been impossible. We haven't been able to do anything as anybody. Everyone's in the same boat. So we're in a position now where we're looking at expanding what we do. We have a membership scheme if people are interested in joining. We have supporters schemes as well. We have events that we're hoping to run through the autumn. Of course, we've got the festival now. And we're just hoping to slowly but surely expand and build the trust more effectively. But you're right, it's a house, it's an old property, it needs maintenance work doing as well. We keep on top of that. There are also opportunities occasionally to stay at Cypress Well and use it. I don't mean just as an ordinary holiday house. You can if you like, but most people want to use it as a place of inspiration. So we get people who come down, they use it as a holiday let, and they write when they're in there. Or they paint or they draw. And it's such a quiet space as well, but so close to the town.
The last time I spoke to interviewed a young lady actually who actually stayed there for 3 months. She felt Charles Causley was still there.
Yes. I mean, I think because we've got so much of his stuff there still, there's a real essence. And I think when someone has lived there for so long and gained their inspiration from that place as well, I think that's hugely important. I was down there last night actually, just briefly, only for about 20 minutes, but it's like you're stepping into Charles's house. It's not just our building that you happen to be using for a number of different things. I think you can really feel that his inspiration's there, I hesitate to say presence because that sounds a bit odd, but when someone's been there for such a length of time, and I think you can feel that when you walk in.
What sort of helped make you actually be interested in Charles Causley as yourself actually? You must be interested in writing?
Yeah, it's a funny one really, and it's a bit of a long story if I'm honest. So I had never been to Cornwall until 1989, so I'm from Lancashire originally. I met my husband at university, he was from Bude. Came down, absolutely fell in love with Cornwall, absolutely fell in love with it. I'd read Daphne du Maurier's work before. I'd obviously seen Charles's poems, but I didn't really know anything about him. And when I came down, we lived down here for about 20 years, including living in Launceston and St Stephen's. I became more interested in him. I'm a writer as well. I don't write very well. I try and write poetry, quite badly, but I do try and write poetry. And I see my granddad in Charles. He was the same sort of generation, went to war, was a writer himself in his spare time, so he was never published like Charles was. But a bit like Charles, he was a self-made man. He was self-taught. He developed himself. And he always engaged me with that concept of you've got to learn, you've got to grow, you've got to always be looking for opportunities to develop yourself. And I saw the similarities and the parallels between my granddad, who actually became a magician. That was the way he went. And Charles, who obviously was such a fabulous writer. And working at the university, being connected with the archive, I've been working for the last 3 years with the Trust, looking at how we can collaborate more effectively and how we can develop opportunities that will benefit both the university and the archive, but also the town of Launceston and the Trust. So there's lots of kind of strands that bring me here, and I'm just fascinated. I'm thrilled to be able to do this.
You've got to keep his name alive, actually, because a lot of youngsters today, you know, they're not taught in school, and other poets come along, and his name's got to keep alive in his own town, really, isn't it? And this is why the festivals keep going.
Absolutely. And one of the things we're really hoping to do in the next couple of years is there's a big press at the moment, and there's a term called place. They call it a sense of place.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Charles is about. You know, there aren't many places where school children can walk out of their school doors or out of their houses and walk to venues that Charles wrote about that haven't really changed. So we've got Angel Hill, we've got Castle Green, St Thomas Water, you know, the list kind of goes on. And it's brilliant, and it just allows you a different understanding about what creativity might mean for you.
You quote actually in the interview, actually, told me Timothy Winters comes to school with eyes of a football pool, ears like bonded, teeth like splinters, a blitz of a boy at Timothy Winters.
Yeah.
And that was basically really down in the old 4th Street, wasn't it? Down
Absolutely.
in the old workhouse at Dundalk Tower Street.
Yeah, and if you go on the Poetry Archive, which is a website that has different poems read out, there are some that Charles is actually reading himself, and he reads Timothy Winters. It's beautiful to hear him read it rather than somebody else read it.
That's where he got his medal from, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. And when he's read it, he talks a little bit afterwards, not for long, only a few sentences. And he said, somebody said to me, did you make Timothy Winters up? And he said, no, he was a real boy. A real boy. And you know that by the way he's written it. It's not just an image of someone or a collection of people.
And Grandma's in the Great with Jim.
Yeah.
And Timmy's just from Aspirin.
Absolutely. It's
so really,
fabulous.
You can always tell, he's actually been in the Sun House actually where that child was on the floor.
Yeah.
So you can tell where he brought the school teaching into it.
And for me, it's getting the children here in Launceston and the community in Launceston to recognise what he achieved from the background he came from, and make them believe that they can achieve as well. Aspiration is so incredily important. To know you can try anything.
Is there a contact number, somebody like come a membership?
Well, the best thing is to look on our website, which is the charlescausley.org .org website. That's the best place to look. That's got information about both events that we run, about memberships. There's some really nice pieces on there. We've got blogs that get written. There's a bit more information about the people that support the Trust at the moment. We're really looking for support. We're applying for public funding at the moment, so Arts Council and government funding at the moment. But what we really need when we're looking at funding is money to enable us to develop core costs. That's the thing that often you can't get.
Yeah.
So we can run projects and programmes, that's great, but you're often on a bit of a hamster wheel then, and then you just have to get the next lot of funding to do the next lot of thing. And to enable us to really grow and develop, what we need to do is get core costs and many more supports from funders and sponsors and advertisers and members that will enable us to really develop as an organisation.
There must be a lot of archives actually out there. People like younger days went to school at Charles Causley. Must have got some archives actually that in the attic somewhere.
Yeah, we've got some, but the majority of papers did go to the university in Exeter because Charles was really keen to make sure that they were really carefully protected. So they're in, proper conservation conditions.
Yeah.
They do come out, and if anyone wants to see them, you can get in touch with the archive at the university in Exeter. I think you have to give something like 24 hours notice, and they will bring out certain things for you to have a look at. But we do have some material. We have a lot of photographs at the Trust, and we have a lot of his memorabilia as well, so original things. And what we want to try and do going forwards is if there are people in the community that have stories about Charles. Some people come up to us occasionally and they'll say, I've got this letter, or I've got this parcel of letters or photographs of Charles.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that we would love to have, because it enables us to piece together more of the story. And we all know, we have an image of what Charles, who he was, what he did. It's different depending on who we are. And the more information we can have, the better picture that we have. And it won't be long before there won't be people who knew Charles still around Launceston or in the area. And that's such a shame if those stories go with them, whether they're leaving, moving or passing away. You know, we really want to develop as much information as we can and grow the interest in Charles. When you know that writers today are still so influenced by Charles Causley, that's when you think we've got to keep going with this. We've got to really inspire people to write and to aspire to great things.
Well, thank God for talking to you, actually. I mean, he's still alive, actually, and he's writing things today.
Absolutely, and it feels like he's here today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
No, thank you.
There you are.